Today, in honor of World AIDS Day, we bring you a deeply personal conversation that explores resilience, stigma, and survival across decades of change in HIV and AIDS care. I spoke with Susan Ambrosini, whose brother was diagnosed with AIDS in 1996, at a time when such a diagnosis was often considered a death sentence. Nearly 30 years later, her brother is still living, having defied the odds through medical challenges, faith, and a fierce family commitment. This interview is a powerful reflection on what it means to live with AIDS and what it means to live well. Here is our conversation. Susan Ambrosini, thank you for your willingness to talk to me about your brother who was diagnosed with AIDS several years ago. What, almost 3 decades?
The day after Easter on 1996. He was at our house on Easter, and we all said, "Boy, you don't look very good." And his wife really pushed him to go to the doctor the next day. And then I got a phone call. He was in the hospital. I went to see him. We didn't know anything about all of the things around that. I know AIDS and HIV had been around for a little while, but we didn't really know. So it was like everybody was blown away by it. I know my dad, he didn't believe that my brother had it. I don't think he could get his head around it. And what does that mean? Where are we going from here? Everybody at that time, that's a death sentence. So we adjusted to that. And because they basically had told my brother when he was diagnosed, it wasn't HIV, it was AIDS. And it was like, okay, so what does that mean for him? And we all had to wrap our head around the idea that this doctor told him could be 2 years. Maybe that might be all you get. And here we are in 2025, and the guy's still kicking.
How did he figure out the interventions or the medications that would go with it? Was that a long journey to?
It wasn't too bad. He referred to it as his cocktail. Apparently, I know that every 12 hours, my brother would take this combination of 3 different medications, and he took that and he would go to see, I think the first year was a little more often, but then it got to where he would go to see his infectious control doctor every 6 months.
So every 12 hours.
I asked my brother that, and he said, my infectious disease doctor said, if this is working, let's not screw with it. Let's keep it like that. Well, I think part of that is because a lot of the new medications come with the whole litany of side effects. And he was tolerating this medicine, and he was doing okay with it. And so let's just keep it status quo. And I don't know. I'd have to ask him if he's still on that kind of a cocktail, but I do know he still takes his medication like that.
So if it wasn't broke, his doctor didn't want to fix it.
Exactly. And like I said, a lot of these new things come with their own set of things that you don't want to be dealing with. So maybe they thought, well, we don't want to put somebody who's doing well with what's going on in a position where he could have a problem. Because there were other things that came along with that. Every time my brother got sick, and he had some pretty horrific things happen to him after that. And that became, oh, he's got AIDS. How's that going to affect how he does?
Speaking of which, so he's had a lot of healthcare or medical challenges over the years. Can you talk a little bit about what he's faced?
Sure,
What it's
absolutely.
been like to watch him go through that?
Let's see, he was diagnosed in 1996. In 1997, he was involved in a head-on collision, and he sustained a traumatic brain injury. And he literally had to learn how to do everything again. And one of the concerns was, how do you do with that? How does that happen with someone who's diagnosed with AIDS? Because every time you go in the hospital or any kind of thing coming up, that's a spoken word. So you're handled a little differently. But he literally came back 100% for the most part. There are some things that residuals, but he was able to go back to work.
I guess we should ask, how old was he when he was diagnosed, and how old is he today?
Well, let's see, my brother, he'll be 77 in February. So he would have been 47 when he was diagnosed. So that was a different thing too, because he had grown children. He had 4 grown children.
Oh, wow.
And they were in their teens. So there's a whole lot of digestion through all of that. Health wise, he's like an anomaly. But I was just calling him a cat. He just keeps coming up with these lives. And I think part of it is his attitude is you just tell me what I have to do and I have to do it. But everything he does, he has to do it with this thing looming in the back.
So we've had the traumatic brain injury, and then after that,
He was quite a long time, he was doing okay. And then he had an issue with his valve in his heart, and he had open heart surgery. And then after that, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he went through that. He's in remission. And just recently, he's going through a lot of issues with aspiration pneumonia. In fact, he's doing well, but you have to keep in mind that's there. You don't get cured, it doesn't go away. So it's always there. Any medical procedure, any test, any this, any that, you have to note that's there and they have to pay attention.
yeah, to make medical decisions in that context.
Yep. But I think he's got a really strong constitution in the fact that he just says, tell me what I have to do. I will do it. Maybe it's living past that 2 years. Maybe it's beating the odds. Gave him that one up. Wait a minute, I was supposed to be dead in 2 years and I'm not. And here I am some 20 years later and I'm still not dead.
Are doctors amazed?
They are, because they'll tell you that there were people diagnosed back then, not many of them are still alive. There are some, but there's not many. But then they watch what he went through. Every time he has something, it's horrific. He didn't have an accident. Everything was major. And I don't know if that's because his immune system, you don't know where that contributes to everything that happens. Does the weakened immune system cause everything else that he have to be exemplified? I don't know. That would be a doctor question.
So what has it been like for you to just watch him bounce back every time he's run into a challenge?
Well, he's amazing to me. He has days that he's down and he just doesn't feel good or whatever, but he always seems to just have this attitude that, okay, tell me what I have to do. I'm going to do it and we'll move on.
It's black and white.
Black and white. This is what I need to do this. I have a family. He's got a very supportive family and I'm just going to do it. Like this last bout with this pneumonia, it took a lot of damage. And he still has this, okay, tell me what I have to do and let's do it. So I don't know if it's spiritual. I don't know if it's just pure strength. But maybe it is the fact that he was told at the age of 47 that you could be dead in 2 years. And the whole realization of that, he just maybe decided that's not going to happen. I'm not going to allow that to happen. And fortunately, he had very good doctor, and everything that's happened to him, he has always had a very good medical staff. So I have to give credit to his infectious control disease doctor because he stayed on top of everything.
Has he stayed with that doctor across the years?
Yes, he's been with the same infectious control doctor for as long as I can remember. I would imagine they would want to follow him.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
We got to find out what's going on with this guy and why him and not Joe over here or that person over there.
Yeah, he's a great contribution to research.
Yes, I think that they followed him closely to see all these particular instances in his life. Something else that was looming out there. He has AIDS, so anything happens to me, that could be my turn south, and it never did. So I'm sure they learned a lot from him, as like they probably do with a lot of the patients like that.
Yeah, it would be nice to know how your story has contributed to research, especially when you've struggled over the years, but in hope that what you're going through means something to someone. It would be nice to hear if there are any answers that his journey contributed to.
That's an interesting question. Do you think that what you've gone through has helped other people with in your situation? I'd be interested to hear his feedback.
Yeah,
I'll
I'll stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, there you go. That can be the next one. I can find out what he says. It'd be interesting because we all look at it as the people who care about him, but he's the guy living it. So that's the most we can do.
So out of all of his medical events, is there a time when you thought, okay, this is it? This will be the big one?
Yeah, there's been a couple times I've gotten phone calls and I would wait and I would wait. Or I would see him in the hospital and this dude is at death's door. And then we would go away and come back a couple days later and he's sitting up looking at you, talking to you. It's like, how did you do that? How did you do that? you know? And he just shrugged his shoulders. So there were times that you worried about whether he was going to die. The brain injury was huge because that was just like out of the blue. I went to see him in the emergency room right after the accident happened and he was talking to me and then his brain swelled and then that was done. He had to learn how to do everything again. So I thought then, is he ever really going to come back from that? And he did. Driving, working, doing everything he was supposed to do.
What kind of personality does he have? That's got to play into the mental fortitude.
Yeah. He's a pretty easygoing guy. He has his master's. He taught history. He loves to talk history. He's an avid Philadelphia fan, so every team there is, he can talk at lengths about that. Things don't rattle him. He doesn't get rattled. I think that he gets some of that from my father because my father was like that. It's just going to do what we need to do. There's no sense where my mother was off the charts on everything. It wasn't. She had 2 sons and then twin daughters. So that's a lot of kids. And you're doing a lot of stuff and you're trying to make ends meet and do everything you're supposed to and give them a good life. And he did. They had a good life.
Sounds like he didn't have time to be emotional about it or overtaken by emotion.
Oh, I think that might be part of it, Arian. He had 4 kids and they were all teenagers. And one, he was dealing with what was going on with him and then what his children would think of him and how it all came together. But they all stood by him. They're like every illness we've gone through, they have all come together and they're there. And my one niece calls him Papa Smurf. And they're there. And so him and his wife, who I give her a lot of credit because she's the one who had to be there, go through all of this stuff with him personally. And I give her a lot of credit. She didn't say, I'm out of here. You can really tell that they love each other and they always want to stand by each other. And they taught that to their children. So that's a good thing.
Now I'm thinking about emotional and mental fortitude. And tell us where he is now at this stage in his medical life.
Well, right now I don't think he knows that. I don't think they've told him he's a hospice patient, but he is a hospice patient because he aspirated blood into his lungs and did a lot of damage. But it was another one of these situations. You went there and you saw him and you thought, okay, well, this is probably going to be one of the last times I see him. But I still talk to him on the phone. And my husband, Steve, still calls him on the phone. They're good friends and they'll sit there and watch a football game and talk on the phone like they're sitting next to each other. Now, when I first saw him, he couldn't form a sentence. And now he's talking, doing great. So,
Wow.
Again, I'll tell you, he's a cat. He hasn't run out of limes yet. I don't. And like they tell my sister-in-law that his health is still deteriorating, but he's not letting it get to him. He talks about getting better. And whether that's the reality that he won't, or maybe he'll beat the odds again. I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks God, should be really great, but then there's that rational side of me that works in hospice and knows that doesn't exist. But you like to think about it. It's a good thought. And he's a terrible patient. That's the only thing he does do. He gets very impatient with the medical staff. That can be he gets frustrated. And so you have to calm down, Billy. One, they're taking care of you. And 2, they have needles, so they could hurt you. And I always get a laugh out of him with that. But he does definitely. Anyway, he definitely has an attitude. Like he isn't like super. He isn't all bubbly and stuff like that. It's just a serious. Let's get in there and do what we need to do. So that's a big thing.
Now, so he's receiving hospice care now. Is he still in a long-term?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's in a long-term care facility, and he's doing really well. So he's pretty.
Compared to when you saw him last week.
last week. Let's see, when I saw him the first couple days, he had just brought him from the hospital that day, and one, he was completely wiped out from that, but he also wasn't making sense, and you just thought he was just seemed very, very uncomfortable. And then I think as they made him more comfortable, and they could get he started becoming a little more aware and out of whatever this funk he was in, and he just started. I was surprised the next day we were talking like we had talked about a month and a half ago. Very interesting stuff when you think about it. I don't know what all the stuff behind that is. I'm sure that there's lots of medical people that have lots of technical explanations for it, but maybe it's more spiritual than anything. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. It'd be great to ask him about it.
I
You
do.
never know. I think a
I
lot
am
of
going to
it.
have a conversation with him about it. I've never thought about that, but I am going to share with him that you had asked me to have this conversation, and we talked, and it made me think of a bunch of questions. And hey, and I'll tell him, if you're not comfortable talking to me about this stuff, you don't have to do that. Some people prefer to, that's their personal journey.
As a
So
chaplain, I want to say men cannot live by technology alone.
that is in fact true. And you may think you have all the answers you may think you have all the book answers, but you don't.
Yeah,
There's answers that will never be in a book. That's where faith and spirituality come in.
there
And
you go.
I think that he's been very he's always been his aware of his faith. He would go to church. He wasn't a big church goer later, and he never forced his kids to go to church. He didn't any of that stuff. He said the rosary every day. He still does. I don't think he can anymore, but maybe he does. But I've been saying the rosary every day for quite a while, but he's been doing it much longer than me. So maybe that has a lot to do with it.
So there is an element of faith.
Yes, there is an element of faith. And because that's when he was really sick this time, my prayers were, before it was like make him better. This time around it was more, do what you needed, do what is best for him,
Mhm.
and just help us understand that. I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to be upset. I know that you're going to do what's best for him. And maybe God said, okay, I don't know. But maybe that's a discussion he had with God. I'm not ready to go. I don't know how that. You as a chaplain would probably understand that more than I would. But
I
just
think
have to.
an important skill of a chaplain is to be able to say, I don't have any more answers than anyone else does.
Yeah, but it's
I would have to hear about what his spirituality, his definition of spirituality, and how he connects with an existence beyond himself before
well,
we could even wire that together.
he will talk about we were raised Catholic by a strict Polish Catholic mother. My brother went to Catholic school all the way to 12th grade. So my mother thought that he was going to become the Pope, and he didn't. But you know, I don't. That'd be another good question to ask him. Where do you think? What's your favorite?
Hmm.
When you're talking to God, what are you talking to him about? I think a
Thought of
lot.
something.
What?
I said, I just thought of something. Is we look at it from his position, but the question can also be, what does God want to accomplish through him?
Yeah, there's stuff to be learned by what's God doing here, or what do I look at it? This is an interesting thing because we have another friend who's going through a lot of health things, and she's very true to her faith. And I ask God, what is it that we're supposed to learn from
Hmm.
this? You're putting them through this for a reason, and they're your faithful servants, and they're going through all this horrible stuff. What are we supposed to learn from this that makes us a better person?
Yeah.
So that's, you sit there and you just, I don't know. And that's, I think, maybe part of his thing, I think, was I have to do this because I have to pull it together for my family. My family. He gets frustrated with them just like any other dad, but he'll be there anytime they need him. And they in turn will be there anytime he needs them. So that's like super important.
Wow.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. Like, you don't know. Maybe that's what that whole thing was about. I don't know. I don't understand the science of AIDS. But it just doesn't seem to be the stigma it was before. And maybe it's just because we've become more accepting or the technology is there or whatever. I do remember back in 1996 hearing this diagnosis and thinking, oh crap, my brother's going to die and it's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any of that. And here he is decades later and he's fighting other things that very well could be happening because he had a weakened immune system. Because I do remember every time he got sick, you worried about, oh crap. But he always managed to pull through. So
Wow.
that's why it'd probably be very interesting to talk to an infectious control doctor and see their input on this and what do they think is happening. How did that happen? How did we skate through that?
Put that on my list of documentaries to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I don't know. I don't know anything about the guy other than he was super with Steve. But we went to an infectious control disease doctor when Steve was in the hospital with this thing for his toe. And this guy was great, very knowledgeable, very down to earth. You never know. You might, I don't know, I have to get his name for you. Just, and you could always send an inquiry. He can either tell you, I might be interested in talking about that,
Oh,
and tell
yeah.
you to,
Go digging around, investigate.
there you go.
So
Well, you
what
got your
would,
work cut out for you for sure.
on top of all this thesis writing, I'll get
Yes,
right on it.
that's it. You'll be the doctor of the doctor.
So what do you
Well,
want people to understand about living with AIDS, either in general or today's 2025 society?
you know, the interesting back then, I wanted people to leave him alone because I know I talked to somebody that worked with him and said, we didn't know this. What would have happened if something happened? And one, he was aware of it and he
Mhm.
wouldn't let anything happen. And now I don't, it doesn't ever come up in conversation. It's okay. We know in the background as a family that's there, but we don't. It's been
Mhm.
around. It's been so long. But I think I want people to be aware that it's real. Pay attention to it. Don't take it lightly. Don't be stupid, but don't be scared to death of it. I do remember people being scared to death of it.
Gee.
I remember people, I coached a soccer team. It's the weirdest thing. And these are 5-year-olds, for heaven's sakes. And there was a mother who was just completely sideways about her kid being in the pool because they believed all these things.
Yeah.
Thank God now we're much more knowledgeable. And whether it be good or bad, there's a lot of knowledge about everything out there now. So we can learn things about it. Before, it was just blind assumptions.
Yeah.
This woman actually thought that if her son swam in a pool with somebody who had AIDS, they were HIV, then they would become HIV positive. And it was that uneducated. So I think that's the nice thing about now is at least we're a much more, if we choose to be, much more educated society. There are still some people who walk around not except there's still always going to be people who have stigmas and things like that.
Right.
That's going to be no matter what.
So how are you do you find yourself I'll make this my last question. Do you find yourself bracing for the moment when you may lose your brother or the moment when you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think I've thought about it so many times, and I think to myself, okay, we're not going to live forever, but I'm not intellectually, I'm prepared for it. Emotionally, I'm not.
Right.
Like my sister went to see him yesterday and she called me and she said he was doing really good, but then it hit her. It hit her that this is not, he's not going to bounce back and get better. And that's when I had to just tell her, you have to take these days and enjoy them. Don't wallow in them. Just enjoy the time you have with them. Don't think about that because it's going to happen. We're all going to die. And we can waste a whole lot of our precious time on earth worrying about it where we can live. That was a quote from my father. You can worry about dying, but boy, oh boy, you're wasting a whole lot of life doing that.
That's
So,
pretty deep.
yeah, he was pretty deep. He just, I think that was part of my father's thing is I have to live, and that's what I want to spend. I'm going to be dead forever. I can worry about that then.
I wonder if your brother hears that echo.
Maybe. I don't know. But my father went through, he had a lot of back problems and stuff, and that's his whole thing was, everybody say, you need to take it easy, you need to do this, and I'll take it easy when I'm dead.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah, I'm not going to be ridiculous, but I'm certainly not going to stop living because
Right,
of him.
yeah.
And I think that's a good attitude. Don't be reckless, but don't be so cautious that you don't live.